Well, this is it. Hi, everyone. Very first episode of the podcast, which we've decided to name. What have we decided to name it?
Apocalypse Alchemy.
Apocalypse Alchemy. My name is Pat. I'm a qualified psychotherapist and linguist. Uh, so I love languages. That's my kind of area of expertise and shadow work as well. I've done 4 years of intense training to become a psychotherapist, and I'm currently practicing a couple of times a week with clients, but I've focusing on my language business at the moment, and I'm joined, as I will be most weeks, with the wonderful Ian. Do you want to introduce yourself, Ian, my friend?
Hello, yes, thank you, Patrick. So yes, I'm Ian. Myself and Patrick have done chats on my channel before many times of a spiritual nature. I'm a Reiki therapist, Reiki master teacher, meditation teacher and coach. I also do hypnosis and various forms of massage. So very much in the spiritual, energetic realms from my side of the world. And obviously, we're both on a journey of not just helping to heal others, but also helping to heal ourselves, and to navigate ourselves through life, because life changes every single day. Life teaches, and through that teaching, we harness it and learn from it and move through life in a wonderful, energetic way, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. We've been coming together, haven't we, for maybe the past few months. I can't remember when we first connected. It was a
It's
few
been a
months ago,
while.
was it?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
It seems like years really, but I know it's not been that long. But and well, I think we do have some sort of like deep soul connection somewhere along the way, because we have some weird synchronicities at times, don't we? Just things just happen.
Yeah, we can talk about that like further down the line. Maybe even this podcast we'll talk about it like how we kind of met and whatnot. But yeah, basically we've always had like deep, meaningful conversations. Every time
Yeah.
we've met and connected, we've talked about what we're currently going through, shadow work, healing, the collective, what's going on at the moment with this great awakening
Mm.
that's currently occurring on our uh, planet. We won't talk about the shape of the Earth in this episode, but we will in another one, I'm sure. As we've talked about that, we've talked about loads of different like deep, interesting topics. Like
Mm.
Ian said, we recorded a fair few of those chats on his YouTube channel, Reiki Zen, if you want to go and check that out. He does loads of cool like hypnosis sessions and did a hypnosis session on me once, which was really, really great. We'll probably do a separate episode talking about like
Mm.
hypnosis and different like healing modalities. But yeah, basically we just recorded our conversations and yeah, this podcast really is just a natural progression of what we've already been doing, and our intention with it is to yeah, obviously have fun, number one, because it's so cool talking about deep shit. It's
Mm.
like what we both live for, you know. We're
Mm.
not into the surface level conversations about, oh, how's the weather? Do you know? We're kind of doesn't resonate with us. And I guess if you're listening to this, it doesn't quite resonate with you either. Um, so yeah, this is a an inevitable outcome, really. And we've decided to call it Apocalypse Alchemy, which is a name that resonates with us both, right? Because we're kind of would you say we're living in apocalyptic times at the moment? Yeah, what does that mean for you? Like
Well,
apocalypse?
it's definitely the end of something, isn't it? It's the end of an old way of belief, the end of an old way of living. Belief structures, systems are collapsing. People don't know. People are saying that it's like kind of the end of humanity or the end of civilization, or there's a lot of weird, suppose, conjectures and things that go out there to describe what is actually happening. But I think people on a heal from a healing standpoint and from a spiritual standpoint, it is just basically people are connecting deeper to their essence, to their spirit, to their source. They're connecting deeper to God, to the universe, to source, whatever you want to call it. Whatever your terminology of it is, people are finding it and realizing that actually the whole belief structure that is collapsing because it needs to collapse, because we're not we're not what they think we are. We are so much more. And this is where people are starting to wake up to their truth, to who and what they truly are, and not just the 9 to 5 eat, sleep, repeat robotic thing that people have been programmed into believing.
Yeah, that's apocalypse, right? It's the lifting of the veil. We're realizing on so many different levels that the world's not as it seems, and certainly we are not as we've been programmed to believe.
Mm,
That we are just our names, our race, uh, our gender, even
mm,
our ethnicity. We're not just those things. We're something a lot deeper and a lot more, yeah,
yeah.
mystical, and that's being revealed to us now in this apocalypse. And then, yeah, alchemy. Do you want to have a go at explaining alchemy, or what's your interpretation of
Well,
alchemy?
alchemy is the creation, and it's also like it comes from the realization of who we really are. It comes from the realization that we are this energetic frequency, and the frequency that you emit, and the frequency that you live within, is the reality that you create around you. So if you believe that the world is ending, then that is the world that you will create. So that is what you will manifest, and you will see that, because that is your level of belief. If you want to believe and see that actually there's a beautiful thing on the other side that is being created through this act of alchemy, and alchemy goes back to, God, thousands of years ago, with the creation of things, and it's it is a vibrational frequency. It's not a physical thing. It's this level of belief, and belief is an energy. Your vibration is an energy, and everything that we have within that is what we are bringing into this reality. So what you see and how you perceive it, again, that is a frequency. So what you perceive is the frequency of your reality. So if you're always going to see and you always feel and think that everything is doom and gloom, everything is death, everything is negative, then you're going to constantly be in that realm.
Mm, yeah, for sure, for sure. And a lot of people are in that state. And this is another reason I wanted to make something. And I kind of tried it before. I think about a year or maybe even 2 years ago. I did start a podcast called The Awakening with Pat, where I was interviewing people who were quote unquote awakening to the global agendas of the darkness. That's the tyranny, the forces behind the governments and whatnot. And I wanted to connect with those people because I felt a real need for them to, okay, see what's happening. Great, that's the first step. Realize, oh, we've been lied to on the governmental level. We've been deceived. Oh, okay. But then to not stop there, because it's an inside job. And that
Mm,
was the other name of the
mm,
podcast we thought about calling it, right? Like we're gonna
mm.
call it like the ultimate inside job.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I remember that.
uh, but which essentially is what it is. For me, I see it as the next step. You see the shadow on the outside, the shadow that controls the governments and everything, that darkness. Oh my God, the world's actually a very dark place. Like
Mm,
the black pill, people call, or the red pill, whatever. You awaken to that, but then you have to keep going and realize and take responsibility in a way for it, because even if you don't believe in any of this spiritual stuff that we're kind of talking about, um, we are the government. We are the society. We give them the power. that they've got. They've only got that power. The power they have is our power. Do you know?
Mm,
It's a complete illusion to think the government have any power. They do
mm,
not. They have the power that we give them.
mm,
So it's kind of we're in a
mm,
revelation of what they're doing with that power, how they're mistreating it and mistreating us and the planet and everything, and we're kind of like taking it back. So the process of alchemy and healing is the process of like reclaiming it. To
mm,
reclaim that power, you've got to reclaim the darkness. You know, you can't
mm,
just be like, oh, look at those bad people out there doing terrible things. They're psychopaths, aren't they? To a lot of people, I don't know if you've spoken to a few people who are like awakening, who are a little bit like that. Do you know? Have you
mm.
seen
Yeah,
people
yeah.
like that?
Yeah, I've
They're so
spoken to a lot
bad.
of people. Yeah, yeah. The finger pointers, definitely, definitely. Um, but it's quite everyone's unique, aren't they, on the way that they do go through this process of unveiling. And not one thing is going to be the same as somebody else. There might be similarities for sure. But because of this individuality that we all have, um, we do experience this stuff in totally unique ways to us. And that's what I find the most uplifting, the most powerful, is the fact that we do have this individuality, but we also have this massive collection of our one energy that we're all linked by.
Yes, the one
Mm,
energy that we all are.
mm,
I've kind of found we'll do a different podcast about that kind of thing, like self-realization, and maybe this is the other thing we talked about, right? We want to get guests on because
yeah,
as great as we are, as much as we know, like we'd we give you all the answers, but it's more fun if we ask other people and pretend we don't know anything.
yeah, yeah.
Like we've thought about getting shamans on,
Mm,
a guy, a psychic I know, and people who are like experts in certain fields
mm,
that would be super interesting to listen to, number one. And number two would be really like, yeah, beneficial for people who are listening and kind of are in this apocalypse and they're realizing all these things about the governments and whatnot, but they want to take that next step of like reclaiming their power and doing the healing work. So
mm,
different healing modalities
mm.
and things and shadow work. Do you want to like touch on that? Like, what's shadow work? What does that mean for you? Because that's a word that gets banded around a bit in the spiritual communities and
Yeah, it
whatnot.
gets
What does
it
that
gets chucked
mean?
around like quite a lot, doesn't it? And I've done a few videos about it before. But shadow work for me is kind of the way I try and describe it is uh we've got to take into the concept that we all have like an ego. And the ego always bumbles along telling you that you don't need to think about that and you don't need to look at that, and everything's going to be okay, and it will paint a picture. It will usually just paint a picture and blanket over it and just say that oh, you don't need to think about that, or forget, no, you don't, whatever happened then, you just forget about it, it'll be fine, we'll move on, you move on. And then sometime along the line, 10, 15, 20, however long it is, it just doesn't, there is no sort of secret number to it. um Things start to crop up, and these can come in the forms of mental illnesses and mental health and trauma, and stuff can be released from within the physical body, within what your ego has basically just told you to just leave it alone, don't touch it, don't go there. And that is your shadow. So that is kind of like, for me, that is everything that you've kind of stored within your body unknowingly. So if we think of like, for instance, if you think of like a dog, so when a dog sort of maybe runs into a wall, and it's like, oh, it like gets a bit of a shock from it, it shakes itself off, done, dusted, dealt with it. We do the same thing. We don't have the same way to deal with it. We can't just kind of like shake ourselves off and just think, oh well, that's that. And part of that experience is kind of like trapped within the person. Granted, for us, it'll probably going to be something a little bit more of an ordeal. So it might be something where, I don't know, you might get attacked, or you might drown and it scares you, and it leaves that sort of like little imprint of fear in the body, and that fear becomes implanted within the body somewhere. And that again is looking at these elements of yourself, looking at elements of your shadow that you've kind of like tucked away, told your ego's told you that you don't need to deal with it, and then all of a sudden it's like boom, it comes out. Sometimes it'll come out without even knowing about it. And you're like, well, where the hell is this coming from? And sometimes that is where a spiritual awakening can begin, because it's kind of like, boom, it will just open up, and it'll open up something within that you've kept bottled up for so long, and you don't know how to deal with it, and it just opens you up, and boom, all of a sudden there's a whole roller coaster of stuff that's going to follow.
Yeah. That's
And
always the way, isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
Suffering. But
yeah,
it's the only way most people, unless you've been blessed with extremely good karma, but even people, let's say if you want to take Eckhart Tolle as someone who you could say, oh, he's got good karma from a lifetime before. Even he, like his awakening was through extreme, suffering.
yeah, yeah.
It appears that it's the only way that we wake up and become conscious of things that, yeah, we're previously unconscious of. Like, you look at it on a collective level, we have to have all of these wars and terrible things like play out for us consciousness to wake up to ourselves and know ourselves, basically.
Mm,
um it seems to be the way that this thing is done. The suffering is like yeah, it's like an alarm, really, isn't it? Like ding, ding,
yeah,
ding.
yeah.
When and once you get experience with shadow work and healing, and instead of getting caught in that like victim mentality of, oh, I'm suffering, oh no no, you see it as like a ding ding ding. Ah, okay, so there's something here that's coming up to the light to be seen, which
Mm,
previously I'd not seen.
mm,
Previously I'd been rejected. No no no,
yeah.
like you said, that's what the ego does. Great, right? It's the
Mm,
defense mechanisms, because it's painful, right? When we get traumatized when we're like children, most of us have like trauma, something happens, or as adults, whatever. But the trauma happens, and at that time, it's not safe for us to process that emotion. We
mm,
have to like create defense mechanisms to survive that situation. But then as we get older, we find that those patterns start playing out in our lives, and we're like, oh my God, why am I, you know, why am I getting upset at this, at that? Like, and you suffer from it.
mm,
And that's when yeah, you wake up and you start to become more and more conscious. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a good point, isn't it?
yeah.
Has to happen. That suffering, kind
Mm,
of like, yeah, I kind of see suffering now as yeah, as that alarm bells uh for the soul kind of thing.
yeah.
Like something's in pain, something's not seen. And yeah, and we'll dive in with this podcast and explore healing modalities and how to address that, essentially. Um whilst pointing people back to the truth that it is an inside job. This
Mm,
alchemy is a complete inside job. So in one way, it's good. I mean, Ian's got one job to do. I've got one job to do. And it
mm.
it's ourselves. As
Yeah,
much
yeah.
as we like to try and change everyone else and
Mm,
change society, and like you said before, Ian, like pointing the finger of, oh, it's them, they're the baddies.
yeah,
Essentially, you got one job, guys. You got one
yeah,
job, and it
yeah.
is you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think this last sort of, for me and for clients that I've worked with, this last sort of like 3, 4 years has been, it's been paramount for so many people, like that have been wanting to discover themselves or go through some level of healing, or something that keeps cropping up in their reality that they need to deal with. They don't know how to deal with it. And that's where the likes of ourselves with our line of work or what we do is to try and just guide people into, you know, finding who they truly are, discovering what it is that they need to be aware of. Because I think a lot of people also don't want to look at like the shadow. They don't feel that they're ready. And yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes there is a point where it can come up and people aren't ready to face it. But ultimately, you're going to have to face it at some point. It's going to come up at some point. And it will occur and it will happen. I mean, for me, when my healing journey began, it came through a series of mental health issues and panic attacks, and me wondering what the hell was going on, why I was going through this, why I was experiencing so much like weird stuff around me and just going on in general. To the point where I did think I was kind of like losing it a little bit and cracking up, and then realized that there was actually a lot of other people that were going through a lot of the same sort of stuff, and experiences and feelings, and then realized that actually, the belief that I was under the impression of was that everybody was experiencing the same as me. Everybody felt the same as me. So my mental health issues that I had, I thought, well, everyone else is going through the same stuff. Why aren't they cracking up? And then realized that actually I was feeling something totally different to what they were. So and then that was kind of like a real eye opener for me. It was just like, what the hell? So I've been going through all this stuff for so long, and then realized that there's something that really needs to be addressed. And that's where it all really began for me. And that was what 20. Ooh, I can't even remember the year. But it really kicked off around about 2012. That's when it really everything just really started like hyping up. But it was going on for a lot longer before then. Especially going through the healing stuff and the meditation and trying to find myself. And it was that discovery of self that really allowed things to become easier, and to work to my advantage, really, because I was then more aware. I was more self-aware of what was going on.
Hmm. Yeah, it all comes down to self-awareness, doesn't it?
Mm,
It comes down to that, essentially. That's what doing the shadow work, the healing, it all comes down to awareness of self, and then that's why it kind of leads in then to real. I don't want to say like real spirituality, but you understand what I mean, right? Of like asking that really important question: who am I?
mm,
Do you know? And we'll get guests on to talk about like non-duality and terms like this. But that's the inevitable kind of path that beings go on. Do you know? As
mm,
you kind of deconstruct this ego that you thought you were, do you know, all these like defense mechanisms and whatnot, and the shadow that comes up to be seen, and you kind of realize, oh, okay. And it's like a big netty process, isn't it? Of
mm,
wow, okay, so I'm not that. Oh, I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm not that. Oh, then the inevitable question is, well, what the hell am I? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, well,
mm.
what am I? Who is this? What is this? And yeah, it's something we can we'll do a separate podcast on that, like nature of reality and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
non-duality. And we got some good guests we could get on, man. We got some really good guests.
yeah. I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day on a video, and he's the guy that I mentioned about. He's the shaman, the practicing shaman. What a life! Wow. I mean, he needs to come on this channel to talk about some of the stuff that he's been through, and experienced and seen. And that video will be going up. That chat that I did with him will be going up on my channel tomorrow, I think it is. But yeah, wow, he would be really good to have here as well, to talk about things from his perspective as well.
Yeah, of course.
Mm,
Yeah, man.
yeah. Um, so yeah, so I think it's going to be an interesting channel. It's going to be a bit of a fun ride. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's probably going to come up that will make people um think a little bit more. You know, if you're just beginning um to discover this stuff, then again, that's what this channel's here for, is to try and make you look that little bit deeper, not just into yourself, but into the reality that exists around you. And I think that's something else that humanity and life itself seems to be changing dramatically into the knowing realization that everything is energy, and everything is a vibration. And I think that's where a lot of healing in the future, and I think a lot of people have talked about this, but like healing in the future is going to be about vibration. It's going to be about the understanding of energy, and not so much based upon pharmaceuticals and poisons and things like that that people have relied on for such a long time.
Yeah, for sure. More holistic, uh, and holistic, whole, holy. It's a
Yeah.
holistic way of living, right? This is what we're coming back to. Yeah, we're coming back from a very like segmented and divided way and separated like way of living because that's how we perceived ourselves, right? We're very separate. I'm very separate from Ian. He's a completely different person. He is a person. I am a person. We're different, and we've kind of moved from, let's imagine like we're different races. Or okay, like yeah, Ian's black and I'm white, so we're different on that level. Genders. We're kind of evolving. You've seen the evolution of consciousness really quite recently, right? Over the
Mm.
past 100 years of, oh, actually, it's not, why should we judge someone on the color of their skin? It doesn't resonate anymore. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And from that, like a layer of fear kind of drops away, right?
Mm.
Okay, great. Oh yeah, maybe we should treat, the genders as distorted as a lot of this stuff has, become, which the ego loves to kind of distort it and, still make it against the men against women kind of thing. But
Mm.
it's, oh, okay, yeah. Why shouldn't we be, treated equally? Why shouldn't it be acceptable to, dress a certain way or whatever? There's definitely that evolution which is happening. And the next step I feel is to actually look at our identity, step away from the identity politics, which is kind of happening at the moment of
Mm.
which is still rooted in division, and be like, okay, let's just drop everything a moment and what is it we all have in common? And yeah, the theme of, well, first of all, realizing everything is energy. That's a
Mm.
big, big pointer, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
big pointer. Well, okay, well, maybe there's no separation then between what you are and what I am. And then that leads obviously into, yeah, more spiritual kind of
Mm.
explorations into what we are and the nature of this reality as a whole. Yeah, I feel like we live in a very cool time. It's such a cool
Oh
time to be
yeah.
alive.
It's transformational. It really is transformational. We're at like a pinnacle point for humanity. Really, we're either gonna make or break from this moment forward, and I think we're really, I think we are making, because I think the way people are changing so fast, and the way people's perceptions are changing to the world, to everything around them, um, and yeah, it really is kind of like snowballing, and I think that's why we do see so much division and so much fight back and so many blocks from the system and from the states, because they don't want that to happen. But on the other side of things as well, within the systems and within the estates, there's also, these people are also going through their own, suppose, their own systems of alchemy, their own awakening. So they're going through that all as well at the same time as everybody else. So not only are we feeling this disturbance within us and seeing it around us, and then coming to the conclusion that, well, actually, this disturbance is what I'm actually creating just from my own perception. They're also seeing that from
Yeah,
within the system as well.
that's
So it comes from all sides. So
exactly.
it's massive. It really is massive.
Exactly. Remember that, guys, next time you're finger pointing at these characters such as Bill Gates. Do you imagine his shadow? Oof. You imagine the shadow what they're doing? Probably not in this lifetime. Definitely not by the way it looks it's
Mm,
playing out, you know. But can you imagine? We're all kind of going through this. And I found that actually, the more in touch you get with your own darkness, and you see how unconscious you were, how unconscious it was just playing out in your life. Maybe you said something, or it's not as, you know, not as bad as genocide, but maybe you said something bad to you, you know, to someone you loved, or you were abusive to someone in some way, and it's completely unconscious because it was a process that was your shadow was playing out
mm,
through you, and you were just unaware of it. The more aware you get of your own kind of shadow and darkness, the more you own it.
mm,
It's not like you're going to take abuse from governments or these kind of characters. It's the opposite, actually. You're going to put in boundaries and say, absolutely not, I'm not doing this, I disagree. But at the same time, and I think this bit is vital, which a lot of these people who are kind of waking up now, they've got the boundaries bit, fantastic, very appropriate. The next step is to be like non-judgmental in the way that if you or I or anyone listening, if we'd have been raised in Bill Gates's family, I don't know how much you've looked into his like his family history or whatever. Who's to say we would be different?
mm.
Actually, you'd be very arrogant and I would say deluded to suggest you would act any differently to how he has acted. And
Mm,
that's obviously not to excuse his behaviors, but this is the clear vision you get, right? Once you start to integrate your own shadow, because you can
mm,
see through, I don't know if you want to call it the third eye or just see clearly. Oh, okay. It's all energy, you know,
mm.
just playing out. And yeah, if you're listening to this, you have been truly blessed with a role of playing on the light side. So you get a lot of peace and happiness and joy. And you're probably very good looking like us too as well. Do you know? You get good avatars, I've heard.
Hey.
Do you know? We're the blessed ones, you know. We are I don't know if you've heard like the chosen ones, do you know? We can talk about the new age like language and stuff as well, but some of it's quite true. I
Mm.
don't know how much of that resonates with you, Ian, mate? Like the new agey language.
Well, I just wanted to touch on something that you'd mentioned before, where
Yeah.
people might be going through a situation and they start vocalizing what they're feeling and putting that out there. Um, but it's not just about the actual physical speech. It's also about your thoughts, the thoughts that you put out there against somebody, against something, against a system, or whatever you don't believe in, whatever makes you trigger. The thought that you put out, if it's a negative thought, you're actually empowering that by giving it the negative thought or the negative speech. So you actually create, and that again comes down to this act of alchemy. You're actually creating more of that rather than allowing the compassion and the forgiveness and the surrender to come over you and just giving them love for where they are. You're actually creating the reaction that they want because the need to create the triggers for you to react in a kind of unconscious way. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but we all trigger and react on some level. We are only human. But being more conscious of how we speak, of how we think, of how we feel, it all comes down to the energy that what you're feeling, you're also emitting and you're also putting out there. And that comes, you talk about language and the language of people on an awakening journey and what they're going through. Some people still use a lot of kind of like they still can be quite negative in their approach. And again, that comes from different layers of the journey that we have to go through individually.
Yeah, exactly. It's a step and it's a step in the
Mhm.
journey. Everyone's on a path for a kind of a different stage, different levels, and yeah, I think one little hack I've found is just to enjoy wherever you're at. Do you know? If
Mhm.
you can, in any twisted, even like in a real twisted way, even if you listen to this now, you're in a real dark place. It's hard to hear like enjoy it, but something with enjoy, do you know? It literally means enjoy. So like to enjoy something, you just do it enjoy, do
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah,
That's I mean that's a form of alchemy, right? You talk about
yeah.
words and things. If say I've got to do the washing up, right? And I'm like, oh man, I've just eaten a big meal. I can't be bothered to do the washing up, but it's my turn. I can't ask my missus to do it again, you know, for the fourth night in a row. I've got to do it. Can't be bothered, right? I got a choice, you know. I want to enjoy the activity, but it's not actually about the activity itself. It's about doing it in joy. So if I can be in joy whilst doing it, everything becomes enjoyable,
Mhm.
do you know?
Yeah.
So maybe, yeah, maybe this doesn't apply for shadow work, but just like, you know, doing the washing up and things and everyday life and just becoming more you become more appreciative, don't you? Once you start seeing reality through a clearer lens, like I guess you could say, when you're not seeing it through the shadow of the ego, like it becomes very beautiful. And this like play of duality
Mm.
is is really quite it's really quite something. You know, it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
But that's not to neglect or ignore like the stages that come before that, which is a lot of pain.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
yeah.
lot and a lot of sitting and a lot of you know, physically kind of hurting, not knowing who you are, feeling so like lost and there's all these childhood patterns and whatnot come up.
Well, you talk
Yeah.
about washing up, but a lot of that can actually come up while you're doing these things because what I've found as well is a great time to listen to yourself and learn about yourself is actually when you're doing what most people would call mundane tasks like housework or washing up. You know, spiritually, I get a lot of messages about myself from my higher self and from my spirit team when I'm just doing the normal, everyday, mundane stuff. And you can do that too. When you're washing up, you become if you become more present with the actual act of washing up. Sometimes what can happen is actually that shadow that you need to be aware of because you are becoming more present in the actual act of feeling the warmth of the water on your hands and maybe the bubbles in the water or whatever it might be. It's that general act of just being so totally present with that moment that feelings will arise. And then you might be in a place where you think, well, what's this about? Why am I feeling this? Why am I thinking this? Why am I experiencing this? And it's a real, because you're so present, it's a real great place to come from that point of internal knowing, of learning about yourself and what you are feeling and what you're going through. And you know, it really is. I find very, very therapeutic. Just doing that everyday normal stuff. You know, just housework and or walking in nature, walking in nature is amazing. And being around trees and trying to be barefoot on grass or sand or whatever has a real great grounding effect to your energy. And really opens you up to just being and just feeling alive, feeling that essence of life that is coursing through you every present moment.
Mm. Yeah, nature. And it's something I before I kind of just dismissed as, you know, that's old hippie shit, you know, like go and hug a tree or whatnot. I was never really connected. I didn't see a point of it. I was like, what? Nature doesn't really make sense. But unknowingly kind of thing, unconsciously, like whilst doing a lot of shadow work, I find myself I have to go out and walk in
Mm.
nature. And even now, like if I've not been out in nature and like touched touch the grass, literally, like touch the grass or go on and like hug the tree or whatever,
Mm,
I'll feel heavy. Do you
mm,
know? I'll feel like a heaviness, not necessarily like a sadness. I might have had like a good day, productive, great lessons or whatnot, good therapy sessions, but I'll feel like something's a bit off. So there's definitely something to that. Like people feel really yeah, drawn to nature. There's a big healing
mm.
frequency about nature and
I think you just feel, for me, my energy feels sticky and heavy. If I don't get into nature, if I don't get outdoors, it just feels like things aren't flowing quite right. And the Wiccans, the pagans, the Druids, they were all so heavily connected to nature, and the way that the land works, the way that the earth works, and again, levels of belief, system structures that made us fear witches, they made us fear the pagans, they made us fear the warlocks, the druids, all those sorts of people. But basically, they just knew how powerful nature was, how healing nature was, and they worked with the land. Um, and but people were made to believe that they were actually evil or dark because probably people never really saw much of them because they knew how they knew how damaging other people could actually be at times. So they just stayed in their own little place and made the potions and did what they need to do to look after themselves. But we see a lot of that now. I mean, I see a lot of it on social media where people are looking to plant remedies. They are looking into foraging, and you see that a lot more in bookshops as well. Spirituality and natural living and holistic living. Those book sections in bookstores have become quite big now because people are more open to it and more aware of it. And again, this comes to people's level of consciousness, because they are looking for something different. They are looking for something more. And they want to look into it and just see, is there something to it? People used it hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. There must be something to it.
yeah, it's all coming back, baby. It's all
Yeah,
coming back
it
round,
just
isn't
goes
it?
around in a loop, goes around in a circle. This is something that me and the shaman were talking about, towards the end of our chat. He's just seen like life just goes round and round and round in circles. And every time you come back to where you started, but you go like you kind of like go up a rung on the circle, you just go up and up and up. And this is all to do with this ascension process. You're just raising in frequency, you're raising in consciousness. So when I think we've both experienced it where we've felt like really really good, and then all of a sudden it's just like bump, and you kind of like hit a wall, and you know that there's something needs to be looked at. There's some integration that needs to go on. There's some level of healing that needs to go on, and you work through it. It might take you a week. It might take you 2 weeks. It might take you a little bit longer sometimes if it's like something that you really need to work at. But then you get this level of lightness comes through again. You're like, oh, and you feel more like connected to yourself, and you can feel and things start flowing again, and then you go bump, you go up a rung again. So that's kind of like what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And it happens, you kind of catch it before it turns into karma, right? Before
Mm,
you start like
yeah,
unconsciously acting it out, So you feel
yeah.
this, okay, someone says something that triggers you, might bring up a memory or something. Instead of kind of rejecting that and pushing that down, and waiting for it to play out again. Because funnily enough, guys, a lot of people, I have clients, they'll come to me and they're like, oh, I just have, been in the same situation. Like I've met the same guy again and again and again. Like, yeah, it's because you're rejecting that part of you that is attracting that. So once you address it, the body mind still has karma, but what happens is you end up dealing with it in a more skillful way
Mm,
rather than kind of rejecting it or acting out like that anger and projecting it onto other beings. You bring it back in. You say, okay, this is coming from me. It's part of me that's not. It's come to my attention now, and then you start working with it. And obviously, in this podcast, we'll give you an abundance of ways to integrate and to heal to love and to see these parts of you that need that need healing in these apocalyptic times.
Yeah, let's do we could do, through on this channel, let's do some like exercises. We can do some workshops, we can do some like working with other people, or even more videos, just the two of us, and doing workshops of how to work on things that you are going through, what you're experiencing, what you're feeling. I can do some guided meditations. I can do, where we can work on different things that you might be going through as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be fun, it's going to be powerful, it's going to be transformative, it's going to hopefully make you look a little bit deeper and facilitate that journey that you're on. And join us along the way, join us every step of the way, because we're going through it as you're going through it at the same time. So yeah.
Like and subscribe, guys. Get ready. This is going to be good. I'm excited. I'm very excited for this.
We're stoked, man.
Let's do this. Thank you for tuning in, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've been Patrick. Ian has been Ian. We have been one. We've been the podcast. Been the first episode. All right. Take care, guys. Speak to you in another moment of the ever present.